introduce Lee Meineke, a co-op member who lives in the borough. She and Sarah, her partner, they live in the borough, and they are members. And Lee knows Judy Wicks for many years. She worked with Judy, and she is on the board. Lee is now on the board of Sustainable Business Network, which Judy founded. So Lee Meineke, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks. So I just joined the co-op, and I've been a member of Weaver's Way since I moved to the Philadelphia area. So when somebody said that that somebody that I hadn't yet met was planning to do that here, I was really excited about it. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'll be better about signing up for my hours, I promise. But anyway, I was really pleased that someone asked me to introduce Judy, because they had no way of knowing the number of different ways that I know Judy. So, for example, she just came over to our house to have a bite to eat on her way here. And got to look at one of the pictures that used to hang on the wall in her house now hangs on the wall in my house because she moved somewhere smaller. So it's been a long time. So I first met Judy in her living room while she was interviewing me to be her personal assistant. I had moved to this area not too long before that, and was volunteering with the Sustainable Business Network, and told the woman who was the head of it at the time that I really needed some paid employment because I was going to graduate school, and knowing somebody locally would be really neat. And she said, well, Judy's looking for a personal assistant. And I said, well, what does that involve? She said, I have no idea. Go talk to her. So I did, and Judy had already interviewed several people, and I like, this would be really cool. I was in graduate school. I'd already heard of Judy before she'd even written her book. Many people in the sustainability community, nationally and internationally, know about Judy and the things that she has stood for, and it's really cool that she now has the book so that more people can read about her story. But I was really intimidated. You know, I'm sitting there in Judy's living room. It's really funky and really cool. There's all these cool things to look at, and she's really famous. And so at the end of the interview, she says, so when can you start? I was like, well, now. So I ran her errands and did bookkeeping for, like 5 years, something like that. And I never actually saw Judy speak at anything. I never saw her in any official capacity whatsoever. So I only know Judy from being in her house, which is the exact opposite. So as she mentioned, Judy founded the Sustainable Business Network, and I'm now on the board of that. And we've only had a chance for our paths to cross when we've invited former board members back to come and give their perspective and make sure that we stay true to the roots of the organization, which is another reason why I'm really pleased about the co-op and to be part of something from the ground up. So Judy has a really powerful vision and came to it over a long period of time, and hearing her story is really wonderful, and so she's the best person to talk about that, so I should really shut up. But I will, and the reason that Judy's story makes a good match for us with the Ambler Food Co-op, there's 3 things that I thought of, and for this Food for Thought education series in particular. Judy's history with small local businesses, which is what the co-op will be. It will be a small, locally owned business. Judy's continued focus on and concern for our local food supply. Another reason why the co-op has a lot in common with Judy's values and things that she's worked for. And then Judy's always worked to build community in her neighborhood and with like-minded people around the world, and to bring other people on board with the journey that we're on toward making things more sustainable and locally owned. And so I guess lastly, I really appreciate Judy for wanting to have fun when she does things. And I will admit that I have invoked the spirit of Judy on several occasions at the board meetings, and I'm like, you know what, we're not having fun. And Judy would not approve of that. So where's the snacks? And what are we doing afterwards? So anyway, it is with deep appreciation for her leadership and her ongoing dedication to sustainable businesses of all kinds that I introduce you to Judy Wicks.
Thank you, Lee. I think that's the best introduction anyone has ever given me. Thank you.
That's because I know that you don't want me to.
Sorry, I was holding my breath. So we did have a good time. Lee designed my first website. Remember that? With the little curtains and everything? So she's a jack of all trades. And I want to thank Estelle where did Estelle go? Oh, there she is, in the back, for inviting me here. And thank all of you for supporting a wonderful project with the Ambler Food Co-op. I wish you all a lot of success with that. I called my book Good Morning Beautiful Business because during the years I lived above the White Dog Cafe, I had a sign in my closet that I would see each morning when I opened the door to get dressed that said, "Good morning, beautiful business." And it was a reminder to me of just how beautiful business is when we put our creativity and our care and our energy into producing a product or a service that we then offer to our community, something that's needed. So I would also, at that time of the day, think of my own business and how the farmers are out in the fields picking organic fruits and vegetables to bring into town, and the farm animals out in the sunshine and pasture. And I'd think of my goat herder, Dougie, who said that when she kissed her goat's ears, it made the cheese better. And I think that's true. So for me, business is about relationships. Money is simply a tool. Business is about relationships with everyone that we buy from and sell to and work with, and about our relationship with nature itself. And my business was really the way that I expressed my love of life, and that's what made it a thing of beauty. So I'm going to do a couple readings tonight, and I'll start with the end of the preface, which gives kind of an overview of the book. This book is both a love story and a business book. It's about a love of life, nature, animals, community, and unique local culture. A love of good food and family farms, and a love of democracy, all being threatened by a global economic system driven by profit. It's also about a deep love of business and how we can embrace a way of doing business that is beautiful, that nurtures all that we cherish, and that furthers the creation of a whole new economic system based on caring relationships. Though this new economy is global in vision, my story, and the story for each of us, begins right at home in our own community, and with our own capacity to recognize and protect what we truly care about. Uh-oh, I turned it off. Now, yay. So my first community, my first place that I cared about was a little town called Inglemark in western Pennsylvania where I grew up, and this was the busiest intersection. Am I in the way with it? This is the busiest intersection because this is where the beer distributor was, of course. In Inglemark, I witnessed the role that small business owners play in community life. I would go with my mom or my grandmom to the butcher shop, and the butcher would always say, "Well, how was that steak last Saturday night?" Or "How was that turkey on Thanksgiving?" Because he knew what farm the animals came from. So the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, these are the foundational relationships in community life that I witnessed growing up. So another really important influence on my life was living in an Eskimo village in 1969 after I graduated from college. And I got married to my grade school boyfriend, and we was during the Vietnam War, and Vista and Peace Corps were draft deferrable, so we joined Vista and ended up in this Alaskan Eskimo village for a year. But it was here that I witnessed a society, a culture that was based on sharing and cooperation, as opposed to competition and hoarding as our own society is. And as an example of their sharing culture, when a man caught his seal at the end of a long, hard winter, his wife would have a seal party and invite everyone from the community over to their house, and they would divide the meat between all the families in the village. And here's a picture of these are the buckets of seal blubber and meat and whatnot, and then anything else that the family had accumulated during the year was also given away that they didn't need for survival. So it could be canned goods or buttons or fabric or whatever. The women are tying up, they use their skirts as pockets and tie things in there to take them home. And then at the end of the party, the grand finale is throwing bubble gum and hard candy up into the air, and everybody's out there catching it with their skirts. So the Eskimos had no concept of envy. If you admire something that an Eskimo has, like if I said, "Boy, I love that turquoise tunic you're wearing," if you were an Eskimo, you'd give it to me. So you have to be careful what you admire around Eskimos. So it made me think about my own culture and how through advertising, envy is created purposely. We're made to be envious of the models in the ads, of the glamorous models to buy this lipstick or this dress or whatever, or the macho models to buy this beer or this car. And we're trained never to be satisfied. We always want more stuff, more stuff. And that was something that was really unheard of among the Eskimos. And they were the happiest people that I ever met. And I realized that their happiness was not dependent on money or material goods. That what made them happy and feel secure was a sense of community. And I know that's what you are building here in Ambler. The co-op, I'm sure, will be a way of building community. So my first business, I moved to Philadelphia with my first husband in 1970 when we came back from the Eskimo village, and we realized we were too independent to work for anybody, so we wanted to start a business. And I said, well, why don't we start a store? Because when I was little, I used to make things and put them in my wagon and wheel my wagon down to the highway and sell these things. And I said, starting a store is really easy. You just buy something at one price and you sell it at a higher price. That's all there is. And he said, all right. So we came to Philadelphia for a wedding, and a friend of ours was going to graduate school at Wharton. And we were telling him about how we were going to start a store for students. And he said, well, you should start one around Penn because there's no stores here. So we found this storefront on 43rd and Locust. And we didn't have enough money for an apartment, so we moved into the back of the store. And we used it. We had $3,000, which was $1,500 each that we earned in Vista. When we left Vista, they gave us the stipend. So we started the store with $3,000, and we just did unique things, like we would buy this long underwear. It was just white. It was cheap, you know, like, I don't know, $3.50 or something. And then we'd dye them bright colors, and I hung this one in the window and opened the back flap and put the open and close sign. But we made really popular, you know, the ones that just have the little 3 buttons here and 3/4 length sleeves. We'd buy those and then tie-dye them, and I think they were only like $1.50 or something. Then we'd sell them for $6 or $7 after we dye them. So that's how we got started. And we didn't have enough money for fixtures for the store, so we went to Chinatown on garbage day and got these wooden crates that were used to ship stuff from China to Philly. And my hobby as a child was building forts up in the woods, and so I was very good with a hammer and nail, and I just hammered these crates together and painted them primary colors. And the inventory was all stuff that we liked. Back in the 60s, of course, we used to say that you can't trust anyone over 30. So we decided that we wouldn't sell to anyone over 30, that these were all stuff, you know, we were selling to our age group, the under 30 crowd. So it was like dangly earrings and beads and frisbees and teapots and mattress bedspreads and all that kind of stuff. Of course, rolling papers and some pipes as well, candles. We also sell clothes. Here's some more trash pickings, like these cables that the electric company used to use for cables. We'd use those for the center tables, and there's an old barrel there. And I painted it with super graphics. This is me taking a picture in the mirror. Macrame belts and t-shirts on the center table, jeans and whatnot. There I am with some peasant dresses. And I'll read you kind of a funny story from this period of time. Let's see here. There you go. In the beginning, we couldn't buy our jeans from a big brand name like Levi Strauss & Company because we couldn't make the minimum order. All we could afford was to buy 3 pairs in 3 sizes from a lesser-known brand. Once we splurged and bought 3 pairs of purple velvet bell-bottom jeans, a big investment for us. They were the most expensive items in the store, and we were eager to sell them so we could buy 6 more pairs, then 12, and so on. The purple velvet jeans led to something we hadn't yet thought about. One day, when I was in the store alone, a group of 10 or 12 high school girls descended on the store all at once. I was trying desperately to keep my eyes on each of them as they asked me questions to draw me to different parts of the store. Suddenly, they all left as they had come, at once, and I noticed with dismay, as they hurried out the door, that one of the girls was wearing a pair of the purple velvet jeans. "Stop, they're my jeans," I cried out, and they took off running. I locked the door and gave chase. Up the street and around the corner we went, dodging the traffic across a busy thoroughfare. I was gaining ground, and as the group reached the parking lot at the supermarket at the corner of 44th and Walnut, I lunged and tackled the culprit to the ground. Without thinking, I unzipped the jeans and yanked them off her. As she lay on the sidewalk in her underpants screaming, I ran back to the store and triumphantly returned our purple velvet jeans to the shelf. I was determined that we would sell that pair and more and more and more until someday Levi Strauss & Company would be very glad to sell to us. And they were, because the store grew up to become Urban Outfitters, which is now over $1 billion in sale international company. And they brought back the name Free People Store. My ex-husband, I'll get to that, is still the CEO. Anyway, and they now have a chain of Free People stores, but the store that we started was the prototype for Urban Outfitters because it was a general store. So you'll have to read the book to find out why, but I decided I had to leave my boyfriend, that he wasn't what I thought he was when I was 10 years old. So anyway, here we go. Dick's and my lives would take drastically different turns. He continued on with the Free People store, and I had no idea where life was leading when I packed my bags and left my husband, home, and business. I got only a block away when I ran a red light and collided with another car. Luckily, no one was hurt, but the car I was using could not be driven. A passerby offered to help me home. But I can't go home. I've just left my husband. My bags are packed and I've got to keep going, I poured out as we stood on the sidewalk. And now I have to find a job fast because I need more money to repair the car. Maybe I can help, said the passerby, a very friendly, blonde, curly-haired young man about my age. I work in a restaurant called La Terrasse on the 3400 block of Sanson Street near the university, and they have an opening for a waitress. I'll take it, I said immediately, as if I were talking to the person who was hiring me. And so that's how I got into the restaurant business that would be my life for the next 40 years, quite by accident. So, moving right along. This is the 3400 block of Sanson Street, so a watercoloring that was probably done 100 years ago. But this is where I decided I would make my home. And I feel like the first step in building a sustainable local economy is in choosing a place. Like, I want to live in Ambler. This is my town. I want to build a community here. This is where I want to work and raise a family and make friends and maybe start a business like the Ambler Co-op. So, and it's important to take a responsibility for a place, to get to know where does the food come from, where does the water come from, where does the waste go to, and take responsibility for that place. So, I'm going to skip the part about, there we go. There's a whole chapter on La Terrasse. Sarah used to work there years ago. But that would take all night if I went through every chapter. So I started the White Dog Cafe on the first floor of my house in 1983. In the beginning, it was a coffee and muffin takeout shop. We didn't even have any tables and chairs. And this was the original muffin shop. We sold juice and coffee and muffins. And then when I decided I wanted to start serving hot food, I couldn't afford to put the exhaust system up through the house, and so I put a charcoal grill in the backyard, and the chef would be out back. In the winter we built a plastic tent around the grill, and by then it was a guy, and he had to wear a parka and boots and whatnot. So the waiters would come down into the basement, out the back door to pick up the food. And we just stayed right ahead of L&I, licenses and inspection, because we didn't even have a bathroom. If you had to use the bathroom, you were sent up to our house and use the bathroom, the family bathroom. The dishwasher was in the dining room, it was just a 3-bowl sink in the corner of the dining room. So when you finish your plates, you just pass them over to the dishwasher, and he'd wash them and talk to everybody. So it was very laid back. Well, we moved quickly. And before long, we started this outdoor dining room around the grill in the back, and then as we grew and prospered, we were able to build this addition over the old yard, and ended up with a 200-seat restaurant with over 100 employees. And one of the important parts in the beginning of getting financing was getting our liquor license. This is a little story I'll read you about those days. And this was back in 1985 when local beer was, no one ever thought about local beer. And I had tried a beer in California called Anchor Steam. Anybody here ever try Anchor Steam? Oh, hi, Deborah. So anyway, I thought this was the best beer I ever had because it was the first microbrew beer that had a rich flavor. It wasn't like that watery corporate stuff that we were used to before this came along. So I couldn't wait to get my liquor license so I could serve it. I was finally able to begin serving the new American beers I was longing for. Customers were surprised when they came into the bar and ordered a popular beer like Heineken to be told that we didn't carry the brand. Then how about a Lowenbrau? Nope. Well, then I'll take a Michelob. Not that either. Then just give me a Bud. Sorry. But how about one of these beers? Handing over our beer list, mighty short at the time, the bartender explained that the White Dog carried only beers from small, independent breweries, later called craft or microbrews, that brewed beer in small batches. I soon discovered that, unlike wine, beer is best when fresh and without the preservatives needed for long-distance shipping, just like local food. So I upped the ante. Not only did I want flavorful all-American beer, I became determined to have beer that was local, fresh, and made without preservatives. So I was thrilled to hear in 1987 that an excellent new brewery had opened just 60 miles to the west in Adamstown. It was not only the first new brewery in Pennsylvania since Prohibition, but it was owned by a woman. That's her. I immediately called up the owner, Carol Stout, and asked about ordering her beer. At first, Carol thought 60 miles was too far for her beer to travel. She was into local too. I convinced her to sell to me. And she drove into town with a keg strapped into her passenger seat with a seatbelt. We laughed about that years later when Carol was celebrating the 20th anniversary of Stout's Brewery after winning many a gold medal at the Great American Beer Festival. It wasn't long before Stout's began brewing our private label beer in 22-ounce bottles, and I drew a label for the beer. It was called Leg Lifter Lager. So, I sold a lot of that beer. I had a lot of fun. That's my kind of little hobby, doing drawings, and so I would do all the ads for the White Dog, and that was one of my favorites. So here are my kids, Grace and Lawrence, who were 2 and 4 when I started the White Dog on the front steps. They look different now. They're 36 and 35. I have their picture here because I want to make the point of how great it is to live and work in the same community. I mean, we actually lived upstairs, you know, like the family farm or the family inn or the corner store in the old days when families lived upstairs. But when you live and work in the same community, you're more likely to make decisions for the common good because it's the community in which you live. And there's a short distance between the business decision maker and those affected by those decisions, whether they're the customers, employees, neighbors, the community, the natural environment, and so on. Where oftentimes CEOs are thousands of miles away from those that are affected by their decisions. So in business schools, we're often told to leave our values at home. So we have one set of values at home, which is to teach the golden rule to our family members, but when we go to work, golden rules. So in living and working in the same community, we tend to have the same values instead of having a separation of values. And we're more likely to have a balance of the head and the heart as we make decisions. And I'll give you a couple examples of how this worked for me. This is Greg. He was a long-time dishwasher at the White Dog Cafe. This picture was actually taken in Havana, Cuba, because we had an international sister restaurant project, and I would take staff and customers to these other countries. And so during the dinner, Greg suggested that he help the Cuban dishwasher wash the dishes, and so when I was looking at the slide, I said, I see why he wanted to help her. She's a pretty good dishwasher. But anyway, I have Greg's picture here because I want to talk about the living wage. That when I first heard about the living wage, which is the voluntary commitment on the part of a business owner to pay not the minimum wage, but the living wage, which is how much does it cost to live in a particular location. So I thought this was a great idea, but I said, it would never work in a restaurant. You know, how could you pay entry-level dishwashers the living wage, which back then, this was, I don't know, 15 going on 20 years ago, was $8 an hour. Now it's probably more like 12. It varies between where you live. Anyway, I was down in the kitchen one day, and Greg looked up at me and a couple other dishwashers while they were peeling carrots or potatoes or something, and then the light bulb went off my head, and I thought to myself, wait a minute, what have I been thinking? Anybody who works 40 hours a week at the White Dog, they have to make enough to pay the rent and buy their food and buy their clothes. Of course I want to pay a living wage. What have I been thinking about? And so we instituted that policy as an entry-level wage. But that came about because of my personal relationship, because I saw Greg. And it was really about my relationship with my employees that were important to me. The next example is my relationship with nature, that I had heard about climate change, and we began having programs, educational programs at the White Dog back in the 90s about climate change. And I also knew that Pennsylvania was deregulated, as was California, the first two states to be deregulated, so that we can sign up for renewable energy. We have a choice. Many communities in the country, even today, do not have a choice, but in Pennsylvania we do. I hope you're all signed up for renewable energy, but when I first found out about it, I didn't sign up right away. I knew it was available, I knew it was what I should do, but it wasn't until there was a drought in around 2000, and I went up to the woods in the Poconos where I love to hike, and I saw the effect of the drought on the woods that I cared about. I saw that the leaves were starting to fall off the trees, even though it was early in August. The stream was just bone dry with dust on the rocks. Fern Hill, where these beautiful big green lush ferns usually wave in the breeze up to my waist, were all crinkled up like brown tissue paper on the floor of the forest. And as I walked along, there was just an eerie silence, just the crackling of the leaves and the twigs and so on, and not even the birds were singing, and the fear of fire was in the air. I could just sense it. I could feel the stress of the woods. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is what climate change is going to be like. You know, that parts of the world are going to have these droughts and fires, other parts storms and floods. And of course, as we know, that's been happening for the last 15 years, more and more apparently. I became a tree hugger. I went over and put my arms around a big oak tree and pressed my face against the bark and promised that I would go back to Philadelphia and find out about renewable energy. And the White Dog became the first business in the state of Pennsylvania to buy 100% of our electricity from renewable sources. I did that through the energy co-op, and I still continue. Once I moved into a different house, I of course signed up immediately for renewable energy. So I hope you all do. That's one of the most important things we can do to address climate change, is to choose to have all of our, of course it comes through the normal lines, through PICO, or whatever. I assume you have PICO here. Yeah. But you have a choice, a consumer choice, that electricity is made not through coal and nuclear and whatnot, but through wind and solar. So that's a choice that you have. There's the wind turbines in Pennsylvania. And it turned out that I'll get to this point later, but one of the important things about local economies is local investing. And when my parents passed away, I inherited stock, including like GE, stuff like that. So I just decided I was going to sell all the stock because I don't believe in the stock market, and I put every penny into something called the Reinvestment Fund, trfund.org. In Philadelphia, and that money is then reinvested in our community in Pennsylvania, and they now also cover Delaware and New Jersey. And I found out that my investment in the reinvestment fund helped to capitalize the wind turbines. And so when I realized how important, that's what made me realize how important it is to invest locally. Because our community needs money to build a new green infrastructure. So I realized that I wasn't just getting a financial return when I invested locally, but I was getting a living return of living in a more sustainable community and economy. So it's very important to invest locally, and I'm so happy that some of my savings went to capitalize these wind turbines. It was only a drop compared to what it cost, but still, all adds up. So another example of balance of head and heart is my relationship with my community. I stopped at a red light one day. I was watching the students come out of West Philadelphia High School, and I was thinking to myself, well, this is the high school where my kids would go if I didn't send them to a private Quaker school. And yet I don't know the kids in this high school, in my own neighborhood high school. So we started a mentoring program for kids at West Philly High that wanted to go into the restaurant business or hospitality business. And we ran this program for 15 years until I sold the restaurant in 06. Or no, 09. Time keeps going so fast. So another thing about the restaurant business that I don't like is this mantra of grow or die. Not the restaurant business, all business. That we have to keep growing our companies bigger and bigger or else we'll go out of business. And that's how we measure our success as individuals too. We have to keep growing bigger, getting a bigger house, getting a second house, getting another car, growing our wardrobe, whatever. That's how we measure success as a culture. People would always be asking me, well, how many restaurants do you have now? They said, well, just one. But I realized that if I were to start a chain of white dogs, that I would give up what was most important to me, which was the authenticity of the relationships I had. That's what really made me happy. My relationships with my staff, my customers, my suppliers, and so on. So instead of starting a white dog cafe in someone else's community, I started a Black Cat in my own, which was a retail store next door to the White Dog, the Black Cat, which was, anyone ever go to the Black Cat? Great. So when I sold the White Dog, I closed the Black Cat, but I had a good run of 20 years because the people that bought the White Dog didn't want to buy the poor little black kitty cat. So I closed it. It was just the beginning of the recession, so nobody really wanted to go into the retail business at that point. There's a picture of the inside. Someone pointed out that it looks kind of like the early Free People store, a grown-up version. That's the jewelry counter. So one of the best examples of this way of growing is Zingerman's Deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan, a very famous deli, and they could easily have done a chain of delis across the country. But instead of doing that, they looked to see, what does my community need? And they started a bakery. They started a creamery to make their own cheese and ice cream and yogurt. They started a fair trade coffee roasting company. They started a candy company. All these different companies, they now have, I think, 19 or 20 different companies in the Zingerman family of businesses. And then, so they're really replacing imports into their community with locally made products. So that's a really important idea. And then plus, with every business they started, they gave ownership opportunities to their key employees. So they're creating more owners, distributing ownership more broadly, which is also a really great, important thing. So I began to see that chain stores are like invasive species. You know, they go into other people's communities and they smother out the indigenous businesses. So that made me think, well, how does nature grow? Like, what's the healthy way to grow? We do have to grow, but how does nature grow? Well, nature grows deeper in a place. Nature grows to become more complex, more diverse, more resilient, and more adaptive to the needs of that ecosystem or community. And that's how we as businesses can also grow. And we can also grow in ways that aren't material. So I began to reimagine growth, that we can grow by increasing our knowledge, by expanding our consciousness, by deepening our relationships, by developing our creativity, by building community, and by having more fun. So these are the ways that I grew the White Dog once we stopped growing in a material way. We would do table talks that would raise consciousness and deepen knowledge and build community. Here's Patch Adams at one of our table talks, the doctor that talked about how humor is an important part of healing. We did storytelling of real people telling real stories and often giving voice to underrepresented groups, whether it's recent immigrants talking about their story or ex-offenders. We did a whole series of tales from jails. Here's a storytelling of same-sex marriage with a gay couple and a lesbian couple telling their stories. We did community tours. This was a community garden tour in North Philadelphia. We did Sulmer House tours. We did prison tours. This is an affordable housing tour. We did community service days every month. This was an AIDS dinner. We did a dinner for people suffering from AIDS monthly. After Katrina, we took a group of 30 customers and staff down to New Orleans to help gut the houses after the hurricane. We did annual events. This was our Martin Luther King event, which was the first event that I ever did, a special event back in 1985, and it was the last event I did in 09 when I sold the business. We did a Freedom Seder every spring. And our pajama party brunch was a famous one. This family, the McLeans, used to come to every single pajama party brunch wearing a different set of flannel pajamas. They're all matching, and every year, oh, wonder what the McLeans are going to wear this year, you know? And the grandmother made them all these matching flannel pajamas. They were so cute. There with their Bloody Marys. And the block parties was another thing we were known for. It was a kind of a slow time of the year, and we'd close off the street and have these great block parties. And this was one of my favorite ones, the Liberty and Justice for All Ball on the eve of 4th of July. And first we'd have a buffet dinner of farm fresh food, and then I'd do a little skit, Birth of a Nation, and give birth in that bed over there. So first out came a Revolutionary War fellow playing his drums. Here I come as the pregnant colonial lady. led by my midwife. I had the sign on my back. My midwife helped me into my bed, and she turned to the audience and said, 1, 2, 3, and everyone yelled, push, push! So under the covers, I pushed my beach ball down through a hidden hole, and my midwife delivered my twins. Here comes the first one. The second one called Liberty, the other Justice. And they hopped on the stage and did a tap dance Yankee Doodle Dandy. And then we wheeled at the Statue of Liberty, lit our sparklers and sang God Bless America. So this was great fun, and I think nowadays we often think that we have to spend a lot of money, a lot of carbons to fly to some exotic faraway place to have a good time, when we can really have more fun in our own communities, have these annual festivals. Maybe the Ambler Food Co-op will eventually do an annual party, and build community and increase fun. And these are all the different ways that we grew in non-material ways. So the thing that the White Dog was most known for was buying from local farmers, and we started doing that in 1985. And the first farm we started buying from is Branch Creek Farm. This is Judy and Mark Dornstrike from Branch Creek. And Mark once told me that successful farming is the balance between feminine energies and masculine energies, between nurturing and efficiency. If you have too much efficiency and not enough nurturing, you might have a very well-run farm, you're using your time wisely, but you're not going to have a good product. On the other hand, if you have too much nurturing and not enough efficiency, you might have great tomatoes, but you're going to go out of business because you're not using your time in a wise and efficient way running your business. And so that got me thinking about how our whole economy is out of kilter. We've got too much masculine energy, and this isn't about gender, this is about the balance of energies within each of us individually. There's so much masculine energy that's all about efficiency and not enough feminine energy about nurturing in our economy right now, and nothing could be more clear than the factory farming of animals. The hens in these battery cages, the whole name of the game is how little space can we give those hens, how little light in the air, how little food and water, no nurturing whatsoever. It's all about how can we get the most efficient operation to get the cheapest egg possible. So of course at the White Dog we only bought chickens that were raised on pasture and eggs from uncaged hens. Then I found out about the factory farming of pigs, which was even more appalling to me because pigs are mammals, like our dogs, like us, and all of us mammals share the same capacity for emotions. We can all experience joy, we can all experience despair. And pigs are also very intelligent. They say the same as a 3-year-old child. Yet these mother pigs are kept in these cramped cages their entire lives, can't take a step forward or backward. They're artificially inseminated. They're in a slightly larger crate while the babies are born, but they're taken away prematurely. Animals artificially inseminated, again, as though they're pieces of machinery in a factory. And this, I was just so appalled by this. And felt that it was really a violation of nature, you know, to treat these mothers in this way, and really a betrayal of our duty as the stewards of farm animals to care for them. So I realized that the pork I was serving at the White Dog must come from the system, because if you don't know otherwise, that's where all the pork in this country comes from. I think 95% comes from these factory farms, which are just terrible. So you know, I came into the kitchen finally and just said, you know what, we're going to have to take pork off the menu. The ham, the bacon, the pork chops, that we cannot be part of this cruel system. So we went about looking for a place to get pasture pork, and in Lancaster County, eventually found several farms. This is the way that pigs like to be. They like to sleep in pig piles, and they're very social creatures. They like to lie in the sun and smell a warm breeze and roll around in the mud. You can find places, and that's something I hope the Ambler Food Co-op will specialize in, and that's meat for those who do eat meat, to make sure that they're humanely raised. I found out then about the plight of the cow, how cows are herbivores, they're supposed to eat grass, but because of the subsidies of our farm bill, it's cheaper for farmers to move the cows into stockyards or into the barns and feed them grains. Dairy cows have it the worst. Their babies are taken away at birth so that adult human beings can drink the baby's milk. The babies don't get any of it, so that we can all drink their milk. And once I found out about it, I thought that was the most perverse thing I'd ever heard. So there are a few farms that do it the way it was done historically. In the old days, human beings would share the milk with the baby. You wouldn't think of taking the baby away from the milk. You take enough to make your cheese or give your kids a glass of milk or whatever, but you don't take it all. So this farm out in Hudson Valley, it's called Hawthorne Valley Farm, leaves the calves with the cows for the first 9 or 10 months. And they've had great success with this. I mean, they make less money because there's less milk to sell, but then they have the calf to sell at a later time. So eventually I got to this is Dougie, who kisses her goat's ears. Eventually I got to the point where I looked at my menu and thought, well, gee, we've done it. Our menu is cruelty-free, you know, unless you're a vegetarian. That all of our meat and poultry and animal products come from small farms where the animals are respected and treated in a kind way. We were the only restaurant in Philadelphia that was doing that. So I thought, well, this is our market niche. This is our competitive advantage. This is all about us. And then I thought to myself, well, if you really do care about those pigs, if you really do care about the environment where these factory farms are concentrating manure that then goes into the water stream and into the air and the soil and so on, if you really care about the workers in these horrible slaughterhouses and factory farms, and if you care about small farmers being driven out of business, and if you care about the consumers that are eating this meat that's full of antibiotics and hormones, then rather than keeping this as your competitive advantage, you'll share this information with your competitors. So that was my big transformational moment when I moved from being a competitive business person, even though I was a socially responsible competitive business person, I still was a competitive person and moved to cooperation because I realized that there is no such thing as one sustainable business. Even if, you know, whatever we do, we're composting, we're using solar, you know, we're buying local, whatever, you can only be part of a sustainable system, and that you have to cooperate in order to build that system. You know, and in this case, a sustainable agriculture system, a food system for our region. Same thing would be true of energy systems or anything else that you need to cooperate in order to build those systems. So that's when I asked our farmer, Glenn, who was bringing us in 2 pigs a week. We would buy the whole animal when our chef learned to use all the meat, pulled pork sandwiches for the bar and all that kind of stuff. I asked him if he wanted to expand his business from the 2 pigs a week, and he said yes. And I said, well, what's holding you back? And he said he needed $30,000 to buy a refrigerated truck so that he could deliver to many restaurants in Philadelphia. So I loaned him $30,000 to buy the truck. And then I started putting 20% of my profits into my nonprofit and started Fair Food in the year 2000. And I must say that at this point in my life, my mortgage was paid, my kids' tuitions were paid in college, so it was my choice at that time of how I wanted to use my profits, and I decided that more than anything I wanted to put them into building our local economy. That's what brought me happiness, and it was I got a living return from that. So I started Fair Food. Fair Food is now 15 years old. I don't know if anyone's been to the Fair Food farm stand in the Reading Terminal, where we represent 100 different producers, farmers, as well as the makers of food, you know, food entrepreneurs making various products from local food, whether it's, you know, pickles or bread or ice creams or energy bars or chutneys. And we have canned peaches and canned tomatoes now from local farms. We have our own crackers in Philadelphia now, so you can put your local cheese on your local cracker and chug it down with some local beer or local gin. We have our own gin now and vodka. Blue Coat Gin is my favorite gin in the whole world. It's made right here in Philly. I'm having a party on Friday night. We're going to be serving that. We don't have limes here yet, though. But anyway, so here's another story. This was another really important experience in my life that helped me to see, have a vision, you know, for local economies. I had heard that the Zapatistas, the Indians in Chiapas, Mexico, had their uprising on the day that NAFTA went into effect, January 1st, 1994. And I was very curious about why they had their uprising on that day. So I ended up going down there, and I continued to work with them for 10 years. But what I discovered is that they had their uprising because they predicted that when the borders were lowered between Mexico and the United States, that U.S. corporate corn growers, subsidized again through our farm bill, could dump cheap corn into Mexico and put out of business the indigenous corn growers. And that's exactly what did happen, which caused a huge illegal immigration of Mexican farmers to the United States. That was really caused by our own policies. So the Zapatistas demanded local self-reliance, and this is something I'd never thought about before. They demanded their right to sell their corn in their domestic marketplace and not be drawn into the global market. They wanted to grow their own vegetables and fruits to feed their families. They wanted to teach their children their own languages for their own customs. They wanted to continue to have their own culture and not be sucked into the global monoculture of Western lifestyle. They wanted to wear their own clothes that their women had been weaving for hundreds of years and not be forced to leave their farms and work in maquiladoras, the sweatshops along the border with the United States, to make cheap clothing to be exported to the United States and Europe. So at first I thought I was going to Chiapas to help the Zapatistas, but then I realized the connection between the farmers of Chiapas and the farmers of Pennsylvania, that our farmers were also being forced off their land by misguided policies like the Farm Bill and by development. And that around the world, our communities were losing local self-reliance, what the Zapatistas were talking about. We were become dependent on large corporations to bring us our food, to bring us our clothes, to bring us our energy, to bring us our building materials, through long-distance shipping routes. And we had lost that security of producing basic needs at home. So this gave me a vision for a new global economy, one that would be a network of sustainable local economies, where local communities produce basic needs at home: food, shelter, clothing, and energy. And then we trade globally for what we don't have. What we have excess of, we trade for what we don't have, like bananas or coffee or whatever. And we also export things that are unique, that our own local entrepreneurs create, a special wine or cheese or special fashion or an innovation that someone in the community has invented that's valuable in the global marketplace. But we have what we need to survive locally, and that builds community wealth. So these are the important aspects of the local economy movement, that we have local ownership for both retail and manufacturing, that local retail gives character to our cities and towns, and local manufacturing really builds community wealth because it keeps that capital flowing within the community instead of going out to large corporations. So it's a farm-to-table movement. This is Weaver's Way in Philadelphia. So next time, someday I'll have a slide here of Ambler, right? Co-op. So it's the whole, looking at the supply chain from farm to table. Where do these products come from? Either hopefully directly from a local farmer as much as possible during the season, but also the other things that are sold in the co-op, food enterprises of different sorts, to make sure that as much as possible we're selling the products that are made locally, developing that local chain. Here's a great story of dirt to shirt, of that supply chain. The fellow in the green on the right, Eric Henry, had a t-shirt printing company in North Carolina, and he noticed that the cotton shirts were from cotton that was not from North Carolina, even though cotton was a cotton-producing state. So he decided that he would follow his supply chain and figure out how to have it be a local supply chain. So he knitted together the cotton farmer with a ginner, with a knitter, with a cutter, all these different parts of the supply chain for clothing to create a product called Cotton of the Carolinas. And here it had been a kind of lost thing, but he resurrected this and has created 300 to 400 jobs in his local community through producing products that begin with the farm and end up as clothing. Another basic need: food, clothing, shelter, forest furniture, and in houses and so on, of a sustainable forestry where you use building materials from your own area, of the trees or the bricks, the quarries, and so on. Son to socket, of how can we go from the sun, the whole supply chain, to powering our cars or powering our appliances. We're a long ways from that because of right now, I think the Chinese make really great solar panels and whatnot, but we're coming along. Tesla, who makes Elon Musk, who owns Tesla, speaking of cooperation, just shared last summer, almost a year ago, 1,400 patents that he had developed at Tesla, because he understands that we need to develop as many electric cars as possible, as fast as possible, in order to make it with a climate change challenge. So he gave away his, just like I gave away my supply list to my competitors, he did the same thing with cars. And this is what we need to do in order to get there fast enough. So I'm in the process now of looking for an electric car. Rick Dennison over here and his wife Deborah brought me, took me on a test drive with a Leaf, and it was just great. So I encourage you all to look into getting an electric car so you can plug them right into your house. And if you are buying your electricity from renewable sources, then you can power your car totally with renewable sources. And you can have a bumper sticker that says "Drive No Evil." That's what I want to have. Rick has it. Local investing is another really important part of this. And I talked about that earlier with my investments that gave me a living return. And prosperity for all. This is a time in history where we're moving from a corporate-controlled global economy to a locally based green economy where we need new owners. We need more young people to become owners of small businesses. So this is an opportunity to see that people who've been left out, and communities that have been left out of prosperity in the old economy, get ownership opportunities and green jobs in the new economy. Changing public policy to support local economies, like the Farm Bill, for instance. Many other policies are geared towards favoring large corporations. And as we all know, large corporations and the wealthy are really controlling our government right now because we don't have public reform. So here's a way we can help. We can stamp our dollars with this sign, not to be used for bribing politicians. So this is part of the Stamp Stampede. I'm a Stamp Stampede ambassador, and helping to talk about how we can get a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics to override Citizens United. I'm selling a few stamps over there on the table for $5 if anybody wants to stamp their money and spread the word. Because we're never going to get anywhere as long as rich people are controlling and corporations are controlling our government. So here's our Sustainable Business Network that Lee mentioned. Are you a co-chair, right?
I was the past 2 years.
Still on the board, and this was one of our board meetings up in the Wiki Wacky Woods. And I like to put this slide up because there's a real collective joy in working together towards a vision that we share for our community. I'm sure you feel that, those of you who are working on the Ambler Food Co-op, that there's a collective joy in having a shared vision that you move towards. Just make sure to have a lot of parties. So ultimately, we all belong to the vibrant community of life on Earth. And it's that interconnectedness or interdependence of all life on Earth, that we're connected to all other people and all of life. And when we feel that interconnectedness of spirit, we can feel the suffering of the pigs. We can feel the struggling small farmers. We can feel the dying fish and the polluted rivers. That this interconnectedness is what holds us all together. And I feel that when we, for me, my big transitional moment was sharing with my competitors. And at first I was afraid to do that. And I thought, well, my sales are going to go down, my profits are going to go down. But I didn't make that decision because I figured out in my head, this is the right thing to do. I made the decision because I love the pigs. And I think that so many times we don't make decisions with our heart. We're told that's sissy stuff. That we need to make decisions to protect what we love, our communities, our natural world, animals, and that if we are willing to do that, to make our decisions from a place of love and take responsibility for our places, that we can build a joyful, vibrant, healthy local community and local economy. And I wish you all the best doing that here in Ambler. Thank you very much.
Questions for Judy, if anybody has any questions?
Are there any tapes at all of what you just said? Because I wish I had let so many things know about tonight. And besides getting the book, do you have any audio tapes? Because for me, it was wonderful. And I think
Thank you.
that was spread.
Rick recorded, he just recorded,
So I'll post it to YouTube, you asked me the other week. So
Okay.
I'll
Is
do
it audio or video?
Just audio.
Audio.
I can put a picture of the book up.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. The other thing is I did a talk that was, if you look on YouTube, there's a number of my talks are on there. They're videotaped. The one that I like the best is from the Schumacher Center for a New Economy. And it was made a few months ago. But Rick also has the audio, and he's going to put that online. So thank you for your interest. And I would like to have a professional video at some point, because I'm getting tired of going around. The last 2 years, I've told this, I mean, I almost have the speech memorized. Poor Ricky's heard the same thing more than once. But yeah, if I had a video, then I could send it out. But it's fun being here with all you. I'd like to come to communities and get to meet people too. But any other questions? Yes.
Have you ever talked to the TED convention?
I have not. I've been invited several times, and it just always happened at a bad time where I just didn't have the time set aside. You know, yeah, it's very specialized. It's 18 minutes, and so this talk was probably 40 or 45. And the way I like to talk is more through stories, you know, and TED Talks are very, very quick. So it would take me a while. I think I could do it, but it would take me a while to figure out how to get my points across without telling such, you know, long stories. So it's a whole different way of communicating, and I think it is worth doing. And one of these days I'll do it, but I haven't yet. So, any other questions? All right, well, we're going to have a book signing over here. And if you already have a book, don't forget it's Mother's Day next weekend. If you still have a mother, many of us don't anymore. Or, you know, a young entrepreneur that would like some inspiration, or you have a niece or a nephew or whatever. And I'm also selling some stamps for $5 if you want to stamp your bills with, cannot be used for bribing politicians.
I'd like to thank Judy for coming out. So many of these points, even though this is a private business and about entrepreneurship, it's so applicable to the heart, you know, the heart and mind thing is so applicable to cooperative. There's grassroots, there's community building. I was writing things down here saying the values, the livable wage, even the reinvestment fund. Actually, they have issued us a letter of support that we posted on our Facebook page or our website. They are really supportive of the co-op and fully behind. When we're ready, you know, they're one of the funders that's in line to help us out.
Great.
Yeah,
That's great.
Who is
the reinvestment fund.
The place where I have my investment.
Yeah.
Another way to turn.
You might want to direct it in a certain direction.
They've helped community organizations for a while, and they only started helping cooperatives about 3 years ago, just about when we got started, maybe 2. Anyway, so many of these things are so applicable to us. So I'm grateful for Judy for coming out, and for all of you for listening. So if we could please say again, thank you.